All right, you are recognized, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Hinojosa, and committee members. I do want to congratulate Lieutenant Governor Patrick on putting together such a intelligent and amazing committee. So we appreciate your service to our great state. With me, I have David Repp, who's our CFO, who can answer some of your specific questions. But for the record, my name is Dr. Dawn Buckingham. I'm Texas Land Commissioner. And as a resource witness, we also have Jennifer Jones, Chief Clerk and Deputy Commissioner, along with several of our department directors, members of the Gulf Coast Protection District, and members of the Alamo Trust. The Texas General Land Office is the tip of the spear for the biggest battles in Texas, protecting oil and gas, serving Texas veterans, providing disaster recovery, preserving the Alamo, safeguarding our coast, funding public education to the tune of roughly $3.5 billion since I took office, and working with our state leadership and other agencies to help secure our border. The GLO has expended more than $8.6 billion in disaster recovery and mitigation funding to date and has built over 30,000 housing units for Texas families. Simply put, my staff and I at the General Land Office and Veterans Land Board are dedicated to improving the lives of Texans every day. As we discuss the budget, please allow me to first thank the legislature for the current funding you appropriated. Your support helps us carry out our constitutional and statutory obligations. I am pleased to report that the GLO funding request for 26-27 is a reduction of 57% as how we were appropriated last biennium. There probably aren't very many state agencies who walk up and say, please give me 57% less than you gave me last session. However, we only bring to you requests that we think are very important, and our exceptional items are very important to us. Our budget in the introduced version of Senate Bill 1 for the 26-27 biennium is $2.02 billion, of which 75% is federal funding, mostly made up of community development block grants for disaster recovery. The GLO has 9 exceptional items and one we have submitted on behalf of the Gulf Coast Protection District that I would like to discuss at this time. The first 3 exceptional items relate to the Shrine of Texas Liberty, the Alamo, beginning with a request for $150 million in general revenue to continue support of the Alamo plan. Inflation has been a major driving factor of increased costs of the plan, impacting materials, construction, design, and labor. These funds are also necessary to defend against encroachment on this sacred site in order to protect the state's investment and ensure the Alamo stands protected as a beacon of liberty for generations to come. If you've ever done a home renovation, you know you get lots of unexpected surprises. We are about to start renovating the 300-year Alamo itself. We have discovered several surprises in that process. It needs a new roof. We're going to have to deconstruct part of the walls. We're going to have to build a protective structure over the top of it to protect it while the roof is off of it. Right now, we don't have hard costs on that, and we want to be sure we get it done right. Second is the request to amend Rider 15 to include unexpended balance authority for the $400 million appropriation in the 2025 biennia. Due to the range of work associated with such a large-scale project, this would provide flexibility to move funds between the biennia and would align with previous Alamo appropriations. While we do expect to encumber all funds by the end of the biennium, this would ensure the state's generous investment is protected against unpredictable construction costs. The third would direct the GLO and Department of Public Safety to enter into an interagency agreement for the security operations that will be provided by DPS at the Alamo complex. Madam Chair, I'd like to express my gratitude for including the Alamo security operations costs and associate FTEs in DPS's budget, which you heard recently. The Shrine of Texas Liberty will be in the best hands with DPS overseeing security operations. This also allowed us to remove an exceptional item for Alamo security from our original legislative appropriations request. The fourth request is $100.3 million in general revenue to provide the state match needed to allow the GLO to begin the implementation of 8 ecosystem restoration projects as part of the overall Coastal Texas projects. These shovel-ready projects are outside the jurisdiction of the Gulf Coast Protection District and address a wide array of immediate and long-term coastal risk reduction and ecosystem restoration needs. These 8 projects are explained in greater detail with maps in the appendix of the GLO packet starting on page 14. Additionally, these funds will be leveraged in order to be counted as matching federal funds for coastal Texas, where the state pays 35% and the federal government pays 65%. So see, we're being very efficient in helping you out with that state portion of the Gulf Coast Protection District's funding. Next is a request for $1.8 million in general revenue to enhance and strengthen the GLO's cybersecurity capabilities in the areas of risk management, threat detection and response, and resiliency. Cybersecurity threats continue to rise at the GLO. Is requesting this exceptional item so that the agency can meet the legislature's intent that we be ready to defend against threats and recover quickly if impacted by a cyber attack. This item also aligns with the governor's emergency item creating the Texas Cyber Command. The General Land Office has actually intercepted 1.2 million attacks that DIY did not intercept. We do HIPAA, we do a lot of the majority of oil and gas in the state. We get a whole lot of attacks, so we need some extra help in this department. The sixth item is a rider at no cost to general revenue, which would authorize the GLO to expend appropriated funds for the acquisition of capital budget items. The GLO previously had this authority under my predecessor's administration, and we are simply asking for this authority to be restored to align us with the same authority and flexibility in capital budget expenditures as other statewide elected officials, such as the Comptroller, Attorney General, and the Governor. The GLO needs the ability to respond to changing needs required for GLO's statutory programs such as oil spill disasters. The next two items cost of capital vehicle and boat replacements. First, I'm respectfully requesting the use of funds for the replacement of 16 GLO fleet vehicles that are all more than 10 years old with over 110,000 miles. These vehicles are critical to the GLO's safety, carrying out our mission of stewarding millions of acres of upland, coastland, and submerged lands throughout the state across harsh terrains. Our cars aren't just simply driving on the highways of Texas. They're on the beaches, they're off-road on the mountains. They're doing all kinds of things all across the state, and they take extensive wear. This is followed by a request to enhance employee safety, reduce maintenance costs, and meet U.S. Coast Guard standards. I request funds to replace boats whose hulls are 10 to 20 years old. My dedicated team, which responded to 764 oil spill incidences in fiscal year 2024 alone, has been stranded multiple times in unsafe conditions due to the age and unreliability of these vessels. As the steward of the state's submerged lands, including Gulf waters up to 10.3 miles offshore, the GLO requires a diverse fleet of boats that are capable of responding to natural disasters, emergencies, oil spills, and must be capable of traversing through inclement weather. Our next exceptional item consists of $1.3 million in general revenue for a new exhibit space on the first floor of the Stephen F. Austin Building on the Capitol Mall to help create a world-class museum experience for guests to learn about the history and heritage of Texas through the GLO's extensive archival collection. During my administration, visitation to our archive collection has increased by 485%, and this figure is a correction on page 11 of your packet. Finally, as the administrative pass-through agency for the Gulf Coast Protection District, we are respectfully requesting this exceptional item at the request of GCPD to amend their Rider 23 to allow for $5 million in each year of the biennium for GCPD administrative costs from unobligated and unexpended accounts at the end of fiscal year 2025. The request includes an additional $230 million in general revenue to be appropriated to the GLO for the purpose of making a grant to the GCPD for studies and projects to be conducted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Madam Chair, members, as your partner serving our fellow Texans, I thank you for your attention, and I am happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Senator Hall?
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome back into the Capitol, Commissioner. You mentioned buying new vehicles. Are any of those going to be electric?
No.
Good answer.
We don't drive where there are electric charge stations very often, Senator.
But I do have a couple of questions for you about the Gulf Coast Protection District. What's the total amount that's been appropriated for the GCPD since it was created?
And I will hand you to David Repp just to be sure I'm giving you accurate numbers.
Thank you. David Repp, CFO. Senator, it's been over the last two bienniums, $750 million was appropriated for the GCPD.
Total is $950 million, if you want to know, including the 86.
Correct. Senate Bill 586 legislation appropriated $200 million. All of that money was actually expended by the GLO directly to drainage districts.
Okay. In the total amount of the spending on the submitted documents, how much was spent by GCPD and how much was sent directly to drainage districts or other entities?
So the $200 million was spent by the drainage districts. All but about $64 million was spent out of the first $200 million. About 90% of that went to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and then only about $500,000 of the $550 million has been spent so far
Okay.
from the last legislative session, correct?
But as I understand it, you are giving funding advances to them. Are they earning interest, or is that money just sitting there?
That's correct, Senator. We are doing advances, and we follow the rules for grants with those advances, which requires them to be for immediate needs. GCPD does put them in an interest-bearing account and then uses the interest for administrative costs.
Okay. And what about their spending on outside consultants? What can you tell me about them, and
I can
what do
bring
they
them
do?
up, Senator Hall, also, if you want to. Yeah, do you want me to bring them up? You ask them the question? It's up to you.
I'm just asking how much is being spent.
Okay.
On it,
Have
that's
it,
all.
however you-
On outside consultants, that may actually be a good question for GCPD to answer.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Ross Gordon with the Gulf Coast Protection District. Thank you for having us here and for the opportunity to answer these questions. To be very clear, to date, the GCPD has spent $2.7 million on administrative costs over the last 3 years or so. That also includes engineering and program management costs of approximately $3.6 million and additional costs in the amount of approximately $4 million in additional engineering services in support of these projects. As was stated, the vast majority of funds that have been appropriated to the GLO and to the GCPD have been advanced to the Army Corps of Engineers to cover mandatory cost share. The other source of expenditures relates to our obligations as the non-federal sponsor for these projects to also acquire lands for the project and to complete utility relocations for the project. And those are other activities that we have incurred costs on to date and have additional costs planned in the future. Those activities are necessary to allow the Army Corps of Engineers to award construction contracts. For reference, the Army Corps of Engineers is preparing to award an approximately $600 million construction contract for the Port Arthur project this coming month, which will represent the biggest expenditure to date on the S2G program, demonstrating the project progress that we're making.
My question, I'm trying to get, are these folks hired to work? Or are they consultants that are being paid a consultant fee rather than being paid as an employee?
So the GCPD has a combination of in-house employees. We run a very lean administration. For the last 3 years, we've had on average about 3 full-time equivalents staff. That will grow to 4 to 6 over the coming years. But specifically in terms of the appropriated amounts that are spent, the GCPD administrative expenses to date have been 1% of appropriated amounts.
Do you hire consultants?
Yes, we do hire
Okay, well,
consultants,
I think
yes.
that's what he's trying to ask you.
Sure, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes. The vast majority of work performed by the district is done by consultants. We have general counsel, we have special counsel on environmental matters, we have special counsel on Army Corps of Engineers contracts, we have engineers who are working on the design of our construction projects, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the people who would normally, in any other organization, be a paid employee, which is generally significantly less expensive than a consultant or a contract. What is the mix?
The mix to date is the majority of pass-through costs are going to contractors or consultants. In this instance, the part of the rationale is the on-call nature, in that as our programs and projects rise, as we have demands for full-time staff, we plan to hire those staff. In the meantime, we have specialty consultants providing as-needed support specific to the projects that we're developing.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Zaffarini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 10 of your document, capital boat replacement, I know that some of your boats are sold as 25 years that you use for oil spills. How would funding this item help us in terms of response time and efficiency to those spills?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. The vast majority of our fleet is closer to the 25-year mark. We found one boat that was 10 years. They are all surplused out of the Coast Guard. We're trying to bring ourselves in line with kind of the Coast Guard standards for their boats. But to give you a couple examples, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before, of course, on Christmas Eve when we had that massive cold spill and it was 30 degrees, my guys were out offshore trying to contain a big oil spill in very tough positions. We had a boat get stranded because we can't find the replacement parts to fix the motors. It's a real problem. Recently, in the last cold snap, they rescued hundreds of turtles. They are on demand. They're in all kinds of weather out there. Our five regions up and down the coast. We also have a need for a boat that you can get ATV on. With the barrier islands, some of the drive time is 6 hours to reach an incident. Whereas if you have a boat that you can put like a four-wheeler on and land right there on the one side of the barrier island and get right to the oil spill, it's a completely different matter. You might remember not too long ago when that barge hit the bridge in Galveston. That was actually about a 20,000 gallon spill. Our guys had it contained within an hour. You might also remember that the day after that spill, that massive windstorm that caused so much damage in Houston hit, and our guys were holding that spill contained through that massive storm. It was amazing. I had the Admiral of the Coast Guard down, and he said only in Texas would this have been a contained spill. Anywhere else on the coast, anywhere in the United States, it would have been a massive incident. But because the GLO is here, because of your funding and your help, we were able to respond and contain these events where they wouldn't happen otherwise. So our guys are out in all the elements at all hours of all the time, and it's my opinion that we need them safe and in proper boats so that they can run reliably and not be worried about getting stranded.
Thank you so much. On page 11 of your document, you talk about enhancing your archival collection. Why would we do that at the Stephen F. Austin Building instead of at the Bullock Museum, especially if you're talking about creating a world-class museum experience?
Well, thank you. We work in collaboration with the Bullock Museum, of course. We are right next door. We have run the oldest archive in the state from our founding in 1836. We have maps from the 1500s. We have all of the original maps of Texas, the original plats of the counties. We are actually embarking on a new project that is marking all the Freedmen land grants across the states. We're doing all kinds of really interesting things. We've run this archive, like I said, for our entire time since 1836. Our visitation is up over 400%. It's where you come if you have a family in Texas and you want to see their original land grants, their original signature, if you want to see the original plots of their property, we have it. The archive is extensive. But only 1% of it can be shown, and we're having a hard time in space accommodating the people coming. To move the entire archive to the Bullock Museum, they wouldn't have space to contain the archive. But what we're trying to do is actually in collaboration. We're about to be in receipt of a very special $3.5 million map collection, and we are going to be rotating exhibits between the Alamo, the Bullock Museum, ours, and some other places. But we just need some increased space to accommodate our increased visitors.
That makes sense. Thank you. In your opening statement, you said you were requesting 57% of your current budget. What did you cut?
57% less than we were appropriated.
57% less.
Yes, even if you put all of our exceptional items in, it's still less than half of our appropriation from last cycle. So I'm having sat on Senate Finance. I'm very clear on one-time expenditures and exceptional items, and we really combed through, and we're very, very conservative about what we thought we really needed to run the agency effectively for the citizens of Texas. I say every day what we're supposed to be doing is serving the people we're supposed to serve and doing that well. And so we really pared it down, and I brought you literally a bare bones what we really feel like we need, including our exceptional
So
items.
my question is, what did you cut?
Well, a lot of it, as we said, without a big disaster, the federal funds part goes down. Our request is 75% federal funds. So a lot of it is we haven't had a big Harvey. A lot of it is we came with an ask for $500 million last time for the Gulf Coast Protection District, and we came with an ask of $400 million for the Alamo last time. We've also recognized efficiencies within the agency, and it's a combination of those things.
Impressive. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner. I was just curious, the dollars that it recommended, they're recommending, removal of the one-time funding, but of 33.3 for federal funds and 21.7 million that are in the permanent school fund, and it was to
You're talking about the
strike the
Bolivar.
rollover pier.
Yeah, so that project, and I can get my team up to get you the facts. That project started out over 10 years ago as a $9 million project. It is very, very, very important to the local residents. And just through a lot of complications between the fact that we keep getting storms that cause damage, Beryl being the last one this summer, and some complexities in engineering. The project now, 10 years later, is $33 million. We were not appropriated additional money to compensate for that, and so we used surface damage accounts, some other things, to try and get that project done for the locals.
So I think from my understanding, to have an understanding of it, I know there are dollars that are reinvested into land from the permanent school fund, right? Is that what that goes to? I'm just trying to figure out how the dollars that are supposed to go to the permanent school fund go to build a bridge.
Yep,
And I'm
let's,
making that very simple. And
No, I think that's a good thing, and you're right. We do use permanent school fund dollars to maintain and increase the value of state lands, but this is a little bit of a unique case, so let me, you're back.
I can give you some of the history. Long ago, it was in a Senate district that I represented, and it was a huge issue down there among Galveston. The pier had been built, and it was causing really bad erosion into, Galveston Island and so forth because of, it was supposed to be a recreational thing, but it was a problem. And so, well, no, that's right. It was rollover pass. That's right. Sorry, it's coming back to me. It was a pass that had been etched out and it was causing, so that needed to be fixed, okay? But there was a lot of pushback from the local community. Now that's represented by Senator Middleton, but through the years, the state and the GLO, it is a conservation issue. It's a fishing issue. There are a lot of fisheries down there. It was just
so it's
very involved. The state was very involved with this. It was
it's
a
an
natural
example
resource.
of when we're reinvesting in land and
So they built the pier so that the recreation, the people could still use it, but they agreed to close the pass. So it was a community effort that went on for, literally, it's been going on since I've been in the Senate.
It'll be a 1,000-foot pier with all kinds of facilities at it. It's really creating an amazing.
It's open to every person in the state of Texas who can use it, and it's a wonderful location. It's it'll be a beautiful asset for all Texans, so, anyway. And I didn't mean to talk, but I just,
no, it was good
I've
explanation.
been around with that thing for a long
That's what
time.
I just needed.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
explanation. Thank
Okay.
you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, then we have Senator Alvarado. Oh, she stepped out, so I'll get back to her. Senator West?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to go to DIR. What services is DIR providing to your agency?
I will, I'll get my head of IT, Arturo, up here so he can be sure we get those specifically answered.
Sure, Senator. My name is Arturo Montalvo, the Chief Information Security Officer for the Texas General.
Yeah, we'd have done saying a word you just said.
Yeah, sorry. Good morning. My name is Arturo Montalvo, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the Texas General Land Office and Veterans Land Board. Happy to answer your question. So we use various services from DIR. For example,
Okay, you're going up and down.
sure.
The voice?
We use various services from DIR. For example, we use their penetration test. We use their assessments. We also leverage their network monitoring, and we use all of them. Part of the request of what we're doing is we want to expand the assessments, expand the penetration tests. So
At all due respect, we can barely hear you over here.
sure, yeah. Let me get it closer.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. So we use different services from DIR. For example, we use their penetration tests. We use their assessments, their security assessments. We also leverage the network monitoring. So we pretty much use most of what DIR provides, including their training and of course their guidance. Part of this request would be to expand the services that we already have. Sure. So In the most recent penetration test from DAR, they found one moderate vulnerability, moderate defect. We went out and we procured our own penetration test that identified 3 significant weaknesses, 3 significant defects. And we did so because we also wanted the flexibility as we moved to our new website that we just launched, a couple weeks ago. We wanted to go and do the assessment right in time to make sure that when we released that website, we released it in a secure manner, right? So when we go out and we request the penetration services from DIR, we have to go and book it months in advance, and again we only get that once a year. So we needed that flexibility.
I noticed, Madam Commissioner, that your exceptional item priority number 5 is improved cybersecurity capabilities, and then your justification for it, you talk about you had an estimated 1.2 million security
Correct.
events. Okay, talk us through that and why not use DIR services as opposed to fund this exceptional item.
Sure. So out of those 1.2 million attacks that we detected, so we do so because DIR goes out and provides a network monitoring for the state network, right, for state agencies. There's other services that are outside of DIR network. So let's say, for example, the cloud services. So as you know, one of the ways that I like to equate it is you have the the state network and the state data center over here. This is what DIR protects. We have the Amazon Web Services. We have the Microsoft Cloud Services, the Azure Cloud Services, and Oracle, and basically pretty much any other cloud service. The protection of these cloud services are it's a shared responsibility between the agency, the customer, and the cloud environment. And so these 1.2 million comes from across the cloud services and the DIR network.
And so the cloud services aren't helping to protect?
The cloud vendors are helping us protect, but that's outside of what DIR could protect.
Okay, then I'm really
Sure, yeah, of course I could
when I mean,
break it down.
You got cloud services.
Right.
You have 3 vendors, and they're helping to protect against any cyber attacks as relates to the cloud services.
Correct.
Right, and then we have DIR that's helping to protect just the agency in general, correct?
That's correct.
And so where does the 1.7 million come in?
Sure.
What would you use that for, given that you already have protection
Right.
cloud, and you have DIR protecting the agency? So why do you need 1.7 million, and what would that money be for?
Sure. So part of the funding is to go and to get subscribed to separate services from those cloud vendors.
I'm sorry, we'd be doing what again?
Subscribe to the services
services.
from those cloud vendors. So let's say, for example, when we leverage Microsoft or we leverage the Amazon Web Services, we go and we can get basically a bucket of services which says, well, we're going to provide a website. Well, if you want to go and add additional security to this website, then we have to go and procure it out of our own funds. And this is something that the DIR would not go out and fund, which is why we're requesting the 1.7
Okay, so this would
million.
be for services, security services above and beyond what you currently have with
Correct.
DIR and the outside vendors.
Correct.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Alvarado?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Welcome back. Good to see you. I know you have spent some time in Houston quite a bit, and thank you for being in my district very recently and some groundbreaking initiatives. If you could talk a little bit about working with the city of Houston. I know that there have been some issues out there, but I know that working with our new mayor, there have been some things that have been streamlined, a little bit more efficiency. So do you want to comment on that, just to make sure that funds that we're talking about is actually still from Harvey and other natural disasters are being monitored and spent efficiently?
Yes, thank you so much, Senator, for that question. I mean, I'm going to be honest, when I took this office, we had a problem in Houston and Harris County, and so we reached across the aisle, especially at the county level, and I know you asked me about the city, but I'd be remiss to not include the county as well. Commissioner Garcia and Briones reached across the aisle, of course, Tom Ramsey was already in full swing, being an engineer himself. We were able to really redeploy a lot of the funds that the City of Houston under Mayor Turner hadn't been able to deploy for assorted reasons, and keep those resources within the Houston area, within Harris County. And today we're at $1 billion in flood mitigation projects, as well as completing thousands of homes. With the city itself, it is a completely new day with Mayor Whitmire. We work very closely hand in hand. I had extended that hand of help to the prior mayor, and he was not interested, so bless his heart. But we're really glad to have Mayor Whitmire in there, and we really have been able to come together and solve problems very, very quickly with a good relationship, with embedding staff, with being sure that we're, again, serving the people we're supposed to serve and doing it well. So I think in general, things are great in Houston. We're going to get a bow on the Hurricane Harvey recovery. It's never 100% what we would want, but we're going to get it completed, and I feel really good about it. In general, we are literally putting thousands of people back in their homes. We do key handoffs all the time. We've got flood drainage projects, just as we broke ground on in your district last week. And I think we're really, really in a good spot, and I think we're at a place where everyone's working together, because I think that's what people want to see. Once the elections are over, they want to see their state, local, and federal governments working hand in hand, and I think we're in a good spot with that.
Thank you. Many of these home repairs were my constituents, so it's good to see people back at home. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. One on the DIR conversation. So you're not considering dropping DIR and replacing it with external vendors for all aspects? Are you keeping DIR and you're just moving
We are.
forward? You are
No,
considering?
we are keeping DIR.
Okay, and the reason I say that is because for whatever reason, they seem to be really loved and really loathed, depending on who you're talking about. And I don't know how they earn that reputation. I know what their purpose is, and I know what they do. And it never fails. The agencies that get caught are agencies that chose not to use DIR services. Right. So they're not perfect, and I'll repeat 100 times. As Comptroller Hager said it, we're one email away from a catastrophic failure. So I'm not naive enough to think that we're not going to have some of those days sometime. But from my vantage point, DIR is a very coordinated group that seems to have their footprint pretty well established on what they can do. And to your credit, you recognized where their services stop, and you're, as an agency, trying to beef that up. So I appreciate that. Back to Senator Hall's question, and it does probably require the gentleman in the purple tie. It's not a painful question, I promise.
No, it's good. And while he's walking up, just real quick, too, Senator, one of our biggest, we've had 12 major attacks that we found, but we found it because an employee accidentally did click on that email and then reported it to our IT team, and then our IT team was all hands on ground to shut it down. And so that's also part of the addition.
And I think that's so overlooked. It's going to happen, but response and how critical in time. And part of the process is you obviously have some internal IT training going on. It's DIR's job to make sure agencies know how to train a lot of times. So I think that's a tribute to the system, to you guys, and I think to the whole process. It's the world we live in. It's going to happen. Those emails get more sophisticated by the day. And as fast as we click on those things, sometimes it's already too late. So it's just a challenge. Very quickly to Senator Hall's question, and it's not a pursuit of an agenda. It's just a conversation. We've committed a large investment over multiple decades to this IKE process and kind of the cost of all that. My question to you is, to his question, and you made a comment that caught my attention, on call. So are these consultants, I would assume engineers get paid when they do the work, but do you have people on retainer, because this is a multi-decade long, or is it time billed and paid?
It's all time billed and paid. So, for example,
you're not keeping somebody handy. I would suspect there's work to be done almost every day on this conversation, but you're not paying retainers to people to keep them accessible.
No,
These are time billed.
Correct. It's to complete the engineering design of a certain segment.
Okay. And I don't consider an engineer a consultant. That's a little different. Consultants, people that you kind of talk to and get ideas, and they point you into directions you may or may not need to be going. But people that are doing those professional level services, engineering and the mechanics and stuff of making it all fit. That's a different conversation, but I just want to remind members, this is where it lands. I won't be around. I'm in that final stage of seasonal life, and I expect I won't be around here for a lot of things we're doing this session if we're right. But it's just important to remind everybody it's a long haul. But if you were paying retainers during that haul, that would be irresponsible. I'd put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hinojosa?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Commissioner. My question on two issues. One having to do with your agency's responsibility with veterans. I know you've been very proactive, working with the Veterans Commission and doing quite a bit of outreach work to educate veterans on the different benefits that are available to them, not only through the state, but also the federal government. But one of the responsibilities that the commission has to do with nursing homes. And a while back, the previous administration had a list of nursing homes that were identified, or the areas that were identified where they would build nursing homes. Do you know what the status is of nursing homes? I know we have one in McAllen. I know we're trying to get one in Corpus Christi, where we have a lot of veterans. What is the status of that?
Sure. Our 10th nursing home, the newest one, is about to open up in Fort Worth. It's the Tuskegee Airmen Home. There are some federal requirements. I can get Tony Dale up here, who heads our Veterans Division, to talk you through exactly the requirements, because it's a combined VA as well as state, if you want to super quickly.
So, Madam Chair, members, Mr. Vice Chair, thank you for the question. I'm Tony Dale, the Executive Secretary of the Texas Veterans Land Board. As the Commissioner was saying, we currently have 9, soon to be 10, state veterans homes around the state. We do those in conjunction with the Veterans Administration. So when a new home is built, the VA if we receive a grant, the VA pays 65%, the VLB pays 35%. In order to build a new home, we have to get land donated to us. By state law, the VLB is not authorized to purchase land for these. So we receive contributions of land from, could be a private landholder, a county, city, whoever wants to donate it. And then there's a process by which we and the VA work together to determine if that location is appropriate for a state veterans home. There has to be a certain amount of veterans in the area. It's ideal based on federal rules if it's close to VA healthcare, in addition to where we want to put it, and some other things like that. So where we are today, Senator, is that as the Commissioner said, within hopefully a month or so, we should open the new home in Fort Worth. We're currently looking not necessarily at new homes, but at our older homes. We have several homes that are 20 to 25 years of age that need substantial work to make sure that they're a great place to live for our veterans. We call them homes on purpose. This is where these veterans live. So we're working on getting VA grants to refurbish the older homes. And as we begin that process, which could potentially be $12 to $14 million per home, hopefully 65% of that paid for by the VA, then we're going to look at additional homes. In fact, I have a meeting this week with the city of San Antonio that's interested in a home there. They certainly have enough veterans to support that. And Austin could use one, but we're going to work on the refurbished plan initially and then look at additional homes after that.
Well, thank you. At some point, just could you provide a list where the different requests are in terms of priority?
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to do that.
And one more question. Commissioner Buckingham, on one of your exceptional items, number 4, state match for federal coastal Texas ecosystem restoration funding, $100.3 million. And that is matching funds with the federal government, correct?
Yes, so in general, when we work with the feds, the state shares 35%. So these projects with habitat restoration also help with resiliency towards hurricanes and flood mitigation. You know, the healthier your waters are, the better your dunes are, you know, all of those types of things. Each of the projects is in your, are delineated out in your notebook, and I can, do you have other? Here.
Well, let me just follow up with another question, maybe, so you can answer it too. And I assume that this match of federal funds and state funds, you also work with estuary local programs?
And I'll let Tony Williams come up to answer the latter part of the question. But the first part of the question is there is a 35-65 match, and all those projects are delineated out in the appendix of your packet. And so they show the difference between where these are in GCPD. One thing that's really important to note is that these are shovel-ready projects, and that even without the federal funding, we can still do the state portion and complete them with the state dollars appropriated.
Do you presently have any funds available to use for the restoration program?
Not for these specific projects, Senator.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator. Tony Williams, Deputy Director for Coastal Field Operations. Yes, sir, we definitely partner up with our local partners on these. We work with the Matagorda Bay Foundation. We are working with the different ports, if at all possible, the Port of Matagorda, the Port of Port Mansfield, the Port of Port Lavaca. We work with the other resource agencies. We work with the cities, the counties, everybody we can. We build as strong a partnership as possible to implement these.
How about the Coastal Bend Basin Estuary Program?
We anticipate working with we work with them historically, and the project SP1 that is in the Coastal Bend area will be building on a project that we have done with the Coastal Bend Basin Estuary Program. It's building breakwaters around the Redfish Bay State Scientific Area, and will build on some of the projects that we have worked with the Coastal Bend Basin Estuary Program, and we anticipate continuing that partnership to implement this.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let's see who's next. Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to bring up the Gulf Coast Protection District again. I think it's important. We have new people that weren't here 4 years, 6 years ago to kind of, as a reminder of what this project is. It is a very large civil works project, one of the largest civil works projects in the United States. The reason Texas did not have to choose to sign up for it, that decision was made about 5-6 years ago. And the plan for the Corps, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions in a second, was to build a barrier along the coast to protect all the infrastructure, particularly like that's the largest petrochemical complex in the world, from the Sabine River past Houston all the way on down. The current project that we're working on takes it from the Louisiana border basically to cover Galveston as well as the Houston Ship Channel. And we are obligated as a state, because we said yes, and our Texas delegation in Congress got the funds, the billions of dollars in funds, we're obligated to 35% matching. And it's done incrementally in stages. Is that pretty correct so far?
Yes, that is correct, yes.
Okay. And the expenditure, so we've been appropriating is probably the better word, about $200 million a year for several budget cycles. Then it kicked up to over $500 million, 500 to 550 last budget.
It was 550 last budget, of which they're still sitting on $500 million. Yes.
Yes, but it's obligated. And so we have an unexpended balance.
I'm not sure about that. I wish you would ask questions.
Okay, well then, is it obligated, or is that put up at the request by the Corps to match the project that they've committed on? And the status of the request for the 230, is that the next balance? And would they likely expend that money in the next 2 years, that budget cycle? And if not, if we don't put it up, what are the consequences?
Sure. So to be clear, our budgets are based on the Army Corps of Engineers schedule for the project. So we have 3 projects in our portfolio: the Orange County project, the Port Arthur project, and the Coastal Texas project, which encompasses Galveston Bay. So each year, the Army Corps of Engineers determines which design contracts they're going to award, which construction contracts they're going to award, and the Gulf Coast Protection District needs to be prepared to come to the table with the cost share for those specific projects. We've been in the most interesting early phases of this because the upfront engineering and planning phases is very labor intensive, but not quite as expensive as actually turning dirt and starting construction. But we're very pleased that we're moving past that phase and into the construction phase. Over the next 3 years in the Port Arthur project alone, we will award 8 total construction contracts, or plan to award 8 total construction contracts. On the Orange County project, we will award our first 3 construction contracts in the next biennium. And on the Coastal Texas project, we are slated to award our first construction award as well. In total, our obligations are the non-federal cost share match for those planned awards, as well as, I mentioned it before, the real estate acquisition that's required. We have to provide lands to the federal government. We also have to relocate utilities prior to the award of those contracts so that the federal government can come in and build the project afterwards. And so, to date, we have expended $325 million of the appropriated funds. We are currently scheduled, based on current forecasts, to expend another $255 million in FY25. And then across the next biennium, we are projected to have to bring to the table or expend an additional $570 million. That brings the total obligation for the GCPD to $1.18 billion, which, when compared back to the $950 million appropriated to date, generates the obligation for $230 additional million to be able to honor all of our obligations on those projects.
I think where the chairman's going from, or coming from, is, when we appropriate money, that's taxpayer money to be used and spent, we hope, on a project in the 2-year budget.
Yes.
The $500 million that we appropriated for the current budget hadn't been spent. So it's kind of hard to tell everybody, hey, we need that $500 million, even though we didn't spend it. And gee whiz, we need another $250 million on top of that may or may not get spent. So do we just need to have an obligation that if what's the likelihood of the 230 being spent in the next 24 months budget cycle? And what's the penalty, or what's the consequences if we don't appropriate?
So very good questions. The schedules are the schedules. These are the planned schedules for these projects.
Can I get in here too, because you're talking very technically, but
Sure.
we're kind of simple here, right, Senator Nichols?
I hope so.
It's
Enthusiastic.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself on that.
Very enthusiastic.
Yeah. Forecasted and projected, is that the same as an executed contract? No, it
No.
isn't. I didn't think so. Okay. And the feds are the ones who make the plans, right? And they tell you what to do?
We developed
The
in
Army Corps?
partnership, yes, in partnership.
Okay. So you're kind of at the whim of them as well. Is that correct? Kind of at their pace?
Correct, yes. They are the ones awarding the majority of the contracts.
They're slow.
Yes.
And they're slow. We all know that. I mean, I thought everyone kind of knew that, yeah. And we move through different administrations, and some are more enthusiastic than others about what happens in Texas, correct?
Correct.
Yes, okay. So that's, to Senator Nichols' point, that's the point. I mean, they're not executed contracts. They're not obligations at this point. There's a plan that you're trying to execute, but it's kind of shadowy. And to Senator Chairman Nichols' point, at some point, we don't like having, $750 million just sitting there when there are lots of needs in the state. And Senator Nichols, I didn't mean to take over your questioning. I just wanted a straight answer. So thank you. Go ahead.
That was kind of what you're saying is basically what I was asking about, and that was if we most likely they're running. I know Don Corona back there from Orange has been working on this thing. He keeps me on updated, but they are slow, and we're committed in one way because we said we as a state want to join onto this project. Yet the likelihood of them actually spending it and calling on us and saying, "Hey, we need that check for that project," are less than 50-50, 20% chance, 30% chance that we'll actually have to write that check in 26 and 27.
There is a strong possibility that we will have to. The schedules are the current schedules. Every schedule has the opportunity to delay. And for example, the $600 million contract that I mentioned before was a federal protest of the contract award that delayed it by 9 months. That shifted that expenditure into the next fiscal year. One important note that I will say is that the Port Arthur and Orange County projects have already received federal appropriations. The federal government has allocated $3.9 billion to those projects, and all we're doing is building it in chunks. And so the federal money is there. We just need the designs and the construction packages to go out. And so that's the vast majority of the expenditures underneath the GCPD are for the construction of those two projects, which, like I said, are already appropriated $3.9 billion from the federal government. We just need to award the contracts.
Let me try it a different way. We've got over half $500 million sitting in a checking account, drawing interest, and we're going to be writing those checks, or GLO will be writing the checks, or somebody over there is writing those checks, as the projects are done, and so we'll be drawing that down. And let's just say, my guess is we probably won't be drawing those down. I'm not the expert on it, because they have a history of being so slow. Okay. But if we do not have that money there, and they do call upon it, because
yes,
the mood in the room might be, we decide we may just wait and see what they do. And if we don't have it there, do they just charge us interest on it?
Yes, there's two consequences. The first piece is any cost share not provided to the Corps on time accrues interest against the state or against the GCPD.
What kind of rate?
Yeah. Yeah, because we'd make more just holding on to it.
It could be as high as 10% interest on contributions not made, the Treasury rate. The second implication is that if we are not able to either bring our cost share to the table or to complete the necessary pre-contract actions like utility relocations, those projects will get put on hold and will not move forward until those dollars come forward. So either we accrue interest against our obligation or our projects are put on hold temporarily.
All right. Can you think of any other questions?
May I just add a little something there?
Yes, what is your take on this, Commissioner?
Well, just super quick. So the General Land Office, we're entering into an agreement with the Army Corps. There's a lot of overlap with Coastal Texas, what we're already going to do, what was part of the Corps' plan. So we're doing something where what we do is getting us that 35% in credit. Parts of the project are very inexpensive, relatively. Dune restoration, building levees, not that expensive. The massive gate in front of the ship channel, incredibly expensive. So the least expensive parts of the project are going to be accomplished right now. And the big expensive parts will come with further engineering. But there's a little bit of cushion there because we're already doing projects that are getting this credit on the state front.
Madam Chairman, I'm just going to say it is a multi-billion-dollar project that we as a state have committed for. We're going to end up having to spend the money one way or another, either this budget cycle or the next budget cycle. If we want to take a risk on it not being there, that's certainly a risk we can take, but there could be consequences. But one way or the other, we're going to end up, since we've obligated onto the major project, we're going to still have to put the money in there.
Actually, the project is able to be done in parts. Isn't that correct, Commissioner? Yeah, that's my understanding. So part of it is all this coastal protection between Port Arthur and, I guess, almost to High Island, I guess, past there, right? Then you get to Galveston Bay and the ship channel. That in itself is a whole nother discussion. I know you have great interest in this, Alvarado, Senator, and so, as does the city of Houston, but we are talking about, I don't even know how many billions, right? I mean, do y'all have a number for that? It's
many, many billions.
Many, and you've gone, I know, around the world looking at other gates and so forth, and the problem with the ship channel is the water comes from both directions if the right storm happens. So, yeah, it's complicated. So there's a lot of issues, but that will take, I would assume, many, many years to resolve. So I think my point is to sort of focus on the projects we have going, the land commissioners working with the Gulf Coast and trying to, I think, leverage the state assets you already have. Is that a fair assessment, Commissioner?
And our broad strategic plan for
so, again, it's a decision point.
All right,
Mr.
thank you,
Chairman.
thank you, Madam.
Yeah, and I didn't, yeah. Okay, Senator Perry, did you have another question?
I just really,
And Senator Colcourse.
it's not related to the project, that 10 billion plus for the state's contribution, but the cemetery in West Texas that John Kelly and you and Tony Dale and these guys have been instrumental in, we're opening that this fall. And the last, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to quote a number, but I believe it was over 700 people have subscribed to a gravesite when that opens.
Pre-registered.
We re-registered. We've got people moving to West Texas that didn't have alternatives. So, state does some really cool things. The feds built it. Now it'll be a state cemetery that will be our job. But just to let you know the success stories there, it's really cool. I think it's August, September, maybe something like that is my projected date. But large interest from around the state moving into that area that's from there. But thank you for that. And y'all have been integrally on the ground. John was out there a bunch, so it's been a good job, good project.
Senator Colcourse.
Just clarification, the 500 million is not in the state's treasury, it's in your hands, correct? And we said it's in an interest-bearing account. Just want to make sure that 500 million sitting around at 5% is real money. And 5% is, maybe 4% on a CD right now.
Yes, Senator, the funds were appropriated to us, but they're still sitting in a comptroller's account until we actually draw them down and transfer.
So he's investing them right now.
I hope so. I don't know if he is.
Comptroller Hager, call me. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, he is. Okay, great. All right. I think that's it. Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you for being here. Okay. We're going to move on to the Department of Agriculture. Members, as we know, we have